The creator economy is broken. Over the last 10, 15 years, we've seen this development of companies and creators being able to monetize on the internet in new ways, which is really exciting. But unfortunately, if you're not in the top 1%, you're really not making a living. And that's where Derek Gorthy comes in. Derek is the founder of Enshrine, essentially the Patreon of Web3, using NFTs and technologies to make it easy for content creators and creators in general to build community and use Web3 in order to better monetize and engage with their audiences. Derek started his first business at the age of 16 after teaching himself how to repair Xbox 360 consoles and smartphones. Since then, he started multiple companies that range from affiliate marketing sites to algorithmic stock trading. After college, Derek started his career in consulting, working in tech, finance, energy, and the health industries, and found his niche in understanding difficult concepts in complex systems. Then distilling that value of those concepts and systems into forms that anyone can understand. And that's what has brought Derek to Enshrine. After really diving deep into Web3 community, they're focused on building a Web3 community engagement platform that gives content creators the ability to build unique cross-platform experiences for their fans. And so we talk not just about what Enshrine's building, but also some of the different use cases and challenges in the Web3 space, but also the opportunities. So this is a fun conversation. If you're interested in Web3 concepts, all of that, that type of thing, then you're really going to enjoy today's episode. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy today's episode of the Silicon Alley Podcast featuring the Derek Gorthy. Are you interested in growing and scaling your business? Welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast, where you'll hear from entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, and top performers on what it truly takes to grow and scale a business. You'll walk away with actionable insights you can apply in your own business and life. Now to William Glass, the CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and your host of the Silicon Alley Podcast. Derek, welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast. Super excited to have you on today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on, William.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in. You've got an interesting background in terms of your focus and what you're focused on now in terms of Web3 and building in the space. So I think this will be a fun conversation, and glad to hear that you're also visiting New York City, normally based in Seattle. So welcome to the Big Apple.
Yeah, hopefully we have some good Web3 talk, and awesome to be out on the East Coast with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a great place to start. So definitely want to dive into kind of like what brought you into the space, but can you, let's start there. Can you talk to me about like what brought you into this space and your interest in Web3?
Yeah, for sure. I have to say, let's see, it's been since 2017. So it's been prior to this, most recent bull run. If you're familiar with the space, it was the bull run prior to this one where, Bitcoin and Ethereum were first sort of getting that first bit of real media attention. And I was in college at the time, studying, software engineering. So honestly, it was the technical side of it that brought me in. And really just like the newness of the whole space, but then also like the promise of it solving, very real problems that we're having. And I guess there's always that challenge in such a new space of really understanding how can you adapt a new technology to actually address problems. Like there's some interesting challenges there that I feel like you just don't quite see in the Web2 space. Among many other things, I'd say that's the primary one.
Gotcha. Yeah. That 2017 bull run definitely brought a lot of people in, and you had all the ICOs and everything else that was going on.
Yeah, definitely.
So you got interested because the tech, specifically in your interest in tech. What was it? Is it just the concept of like blockchain technology, open ledger? Like what was it about the technology that drew you in?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've read a fair bit of the white papers, like especially in the ICO days. Each kind of ICO would publish their own, long 50, 100-page white paper, and you need to go and you read through it. I think it's more, the peer-to-peer decentralized trustless part of it, where there's, a real promise for something where you don't need that intermediary. That actually kind of ties into the business that I'm working on now, but trying to get away from this like need for a middleman, or you're like Uber of something, right? In tech, that's kind of a big thing. And just seeing that, being a trend in every single space, it's like, is there a way that this tech can kind of solve for that problem and take the Uber of whatever out of the equation and just let people kind of build things to work with each other without, that intermediary in there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense, right? And we've seen that with Web 2 and all these big tech companies. Talk to me about, why do you think that it's important that we have the peer-to-peer nature, right? Like, why isn't it okay to just use Uber?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a space for that, right? And I don't think that's kind of the misconception that some people have when they, learn about Web 3, is it's like, oh, we're just trying to replace every single thing in Web 2 with Web 3. That's not the case. There's always going to be a need for that, but there are applications where maybe that like intermediary is not needed. There's actually an interesting TED talk by Adam Mosseri. He's the head of Instagram, and he goes into it in a lot of detail. So definitely go and watch that. But the premise of what he's saying is like, the early 90s to mid 90s leading up to really when the internet became popular, you kind of saw this distribution of power away from these large, or not internet companies, like newspaper companies, TV companies, all these kind of centralized places of power in the media space. And then with this sort of birth of the internet, the real birth of the internet, where it became popular, the power kind of went into the hands of all these independent creators and writers, and we've kind of seen from that, late 90s until now, we've seen that kind of re-centralization of power in this space. Like if we look at Meta, we look at Twitter, we look at, the very few
Yeah.
social media companies. For creators, they don't really have a ton of options. And when that's the case, the platforms kind of set the rules. So, I'm hoping in that space there is a bit where Web 3 can help, where you have these real like power brokers in the space taking a huge chunk of like the earnings pie. Ideally more money would go towards the creators, or at least there's more competition in that space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. And I wasn't trying to put you on the spot there to like
No,
argue
for
for
sure.
all of Web3, but just, like to talk through it and think through, like, well,
Yeah,
why
definitely.
is it? And so I think it's just a helpful conversation to have. And like, even in the Web3 space, there's still places where you still go that's kind of like centralized for the time being, right? Like if you think about like Coinbase
Yeah,
being
absolutely.
like, one of the top crypto exchanges. So a lot of
Hmm.
people rely on that, and even OpenSea with being the main NFT marketplace. But there's a
Yeah.
lot of other opportunities when you look at companies like LooksRare that is trying to compete against an OpenSea, because their argument is that it's still so centralized. So it's just
Yeah.
interesting because it doesn't, to your point, it's not necessarily getting rid of that, right? There's a place and there's some value to having some level of centralization, but not in everything and in every way, right? It's kind of like a balance of power.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Exactly. And I think that there's like a distinction between, is something popular and do they have just this overwhelming amount of power in the space where they set the rules? And there should be that healthy trade-off between platform and the people that are actually bringing value to that platform. And so while OpenSea is a big player, if you look at the share of revenue that they're taking from each transaction, it's a lot lower than if you look at what, I guess Twitch is not exactly analogous, but the percentage of revenue that they take from the creators on their platform, it's extremely different, right? There's a big gap there.
or like Apple, right? All the issues with their app store taking 30%
Yeah,
from
exactly.
app creators,
30%.
whereas
Exactly.
OpenSea takes 2.5. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's very, very huge difference in terms of how much they're extracting, which is
Yeah,
a great
absolutely.
point. Great point.
Absolutely.
So Derek, you mentioned the creator side. Like, talk to me about what you guys are building at Enshrine.
Yeah, so for sure. We kind of brand ourselves as a Web 3 community engagement platform. So basically, we are trying to empower content creators to build unique experiences for their fans backed by blockchain technology. So basically, what we're trying to do that's different from an OpenSea is really bring the utility part of the NFT space and put that sort of first, put that forward, because the way that we see it is the real value, like the real, I guess, value behind the NFT projects that we see that are popular now. It's not usually the art, it's not usually the media behind it, and there are cases where it actually is. Like if you're licensing, if you're trying to sell off portions of like, a record, which I've seen some music artists do. But in most cases, it's the actual utility, it's the thing behind the NFT. And so we're trying to make it easy for a creator that knows absolutely nothing about the space to go and attach some kind of utility to whatever, a video, an image, a tweet, like an Instagram post, anything that they want, and offer that up to their fans in a way that you don't really see on any other exchange, at least that we're aware of right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting, and you guys especially hear this, right? That's the whole thing of like, what's the utility behind this NFT? And there
Yeah,
are some that are pure art based, but those are more of like your one of ones, and
yeah,
artists versus like a collection by a
yeah,
creator. So, can you
exactly.
talk to me a little bit about what inspired you to tackle this problem specifically?
Yeah, definitely. So when we initially started, like over a year ago at this point, we came in wanting to build something. I don't know if you saw the William Shatner NFT site that popped up. I want to say like May of last year. He was selling headshots, basically just NFTs. There are a bunch of big name celebrities that were standing up one-off sites, and we thought, we're software developers, let's go ahead and do that. And then when we kind of saw that aspect, or that bit of the NFT space become really proliferated, we thought, there's not a ton of value here. We'd really just be capitalizing on the hype. And then in 5 years, is this even a viable business? Probably not. So we wanted to really get to the heart of like, why would you use an NFT? What does this technology actually solve? And we kind of saw in the projects that were successful, it's really, like you said, it's the utility. People are really interested in what do I get for owning this piece? Like, why can't I just right click save? Like, what's the difference between me doing that and me actually owning the thing? And so, actually giving people a way to easily put utility behind an NFT is something that we still haven't seen, which is kind of baffling. Like, you have to hire a developer to go out and do it, and then there's no real single way that it's represented on any platform even. Um, yeah, so that's essentially the problem that we were looking to solve, and really we do see a need for that in the creator space. I mean, if you look at the Web 2 space, Patreon is extremely successful. But what if you had Patreon where there's not just a one-way flow of cash from the supporter to the creator, but it was the supporter to the creator, and then even between supporters, and then on each resale between that resale and the creator.
Gotcha. No, I like that analogy. So are you thinking that it's going to be, so like, is that how you're positioning it, as like the Web3 Patreon, or are you doing more than just like what Patreon does, which is essentially a way to monetize for creators? And there's a little bit of community engagement, right? But
Yeah, so initially that's what we're angling for. Obviously, there's always
okay.
room for growth in this space, but initially setting our sights on, and not even everything that Patreon has. Like, if you look at, we're especially looking at like the Twitch streaming community
Mhm.
space. They're already engaging their fan base on Discord. So why reinvent the wheel? Why try and fragment that community? We don't need to reinvent, Discord, but we can give them a way to, create an NFT that when someone buys it, they get granted a role on that Discord server, and have that just be tied to their account, tied to their Discord user profile, and just have that automatically sync. So in, I guess, some aspects of Patreon, absolutely. I would argue that we're angling for more unique applications of it as well, which we can get into if you want. But definitely that's the start, to kind of prove out and show people how you can kind of do NFTs differently, like not how they're traditionally being done.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, no, it's helpful. Yeah, and I'd love to dive into some of the use cases, because I think it's interesting to think through like what are the different
Yeah,
ways that you could use this, and how are you thinking about it, because there's a lot of different problems that need to be solved. And especially when you think about creators and the fact that a lot of them may not, they've probably heard about NFTs but don't really know, they might be
yeah,
skeptical. And then when you expand that to their fan bases, like there's a hurdle there. There's definitely going to be early adopters. So I'm just curious, like, what are you, like, how are you thinking through that? And what are some of the ways that you're planning on tackling this challenge for creators?
yeah, for sure. So on the, I guess, like NFT image problem, like let's not, sugarcoat it. That's bluntly how it actually is. I mean, that's why we're branding ourselves as a Web3 company, because it's not really, I guess the NFT is not the point. I would say a lot of the mistake that a lot of these projects have is like the NFT is the cool thing, like that's the end all be all of it. But really, NFTs are just a tool to accomplish something, right? And that's, Web3 is just a collection of all these technologies. There's a reason that we're using NFTs in that they're all individually identifiable and you can assign, individual utilities to a single token without having to create a bunch of like fungible tokens, which wouldn't even make any sense. So like that's the technology that we're using, but you're not owning the NFT because it's an NFT, you're owning it because there's utility behind it. So it's certainly going to be a challenge. But I think really the value prop is, if you look at what Patreon is doing, why am I adding another subscription? Like, people hate subscriptions, but really the point is I want to support this creator, or I get value out of this extra stuff that I get access to. That's really the value proposition, I think, for their fans is, you are supporting the creator. You're doing it in a way that there are lower fees, so more of your money actually goes to them, and you get access to all the cool stuff that they have to offer.
Yeah, no, I love that, Derek. And I think that that's a great way to frame it. And I'm glad that you did that. It's not about the NFTs. Like, that's a technology. Like, I like to think of it as like websites in the 90s. Like, yeah, you could go create a website, but like a website, like just creating a website didn't do anything, right? It was like what you did with the website that became really valuable, that turned into all these companies that we now use. Or like, brands were launching a website, but it was static information that you could interact with. But now today, like, you can shop on Walmart.com and get stuff delivered to you, which is much more valuable than just like a list of Walmart stores or whatever, Walmart's initial website was in the 90s. So like, to me, that's like where we are with NFTs. We're like talking about the technology, like in and of itself, it's this great thing. But as you said, it's what you do with it that matters.
Yeah, and that's a really good analogy, because I also think if you look at how widespread the internet was, I mean, late 90s, there were a ton of people on the internet, and you could go to Walmart.com and see a list of, Walmart locations, and that's great. And the people that really like the technology are always going to like that. But you have this issue of everyone else was asking, what's the point? I don't need to go and do this. And now you look at today, and everyone is using internet, every single day on their phones, on all the social media apps to get driving directions, right? Like, that's the same thing I think with NFTs. Is there's that really, solid group of early adopters that are passionate about the tech, and that's great. Like, that is great that there is adoption in this space. But in order for this to proliferate even further and have it be truly widespread adoption, I think we're going to have to make the case for, well, why would I use this tech besides it being cool? Which that's why I would use it. But I know, the sort of tests that I use for everything that we do, from like writing explainers for NFTs on the site to sort of designing the product, is like, do I see my mom using this? Do I see my parents using this? And I know right now she's not going to go on OpenSea and buy an NFT, because she doesn't care. There's no point to doing it. But, if she had some, whatever, content creator on Pinterest or something, I don't want to trivialize it too much, but like, if she had, a content creator that she could have like a phone call with or something, that were backed by an NFT, I could see her actually buying it, because that's something that she, or maybe I would buy it for her for Christmas or something, but she would actually, use it and get value out of it. So I think that's really the test, is like, do the people that are not currently using it, which is the majority of people, what could you do to convince them to use this? And I really think it is, give them a good reason, right? Like, give them some thing that they are not already getting out of Web2 solutions or whatever it is, and offer that to them in a way that's approachable.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think, it makes a lot of sense, that test of like, will somebody, my mom, or in the real world, actually use this because it's of value to what they already believe and what they want, and all that, right? Like, so how do you just add value to the things that people already do or already want? And it just happens to be that it's an NFT format, because you understand the technology and there's all these benefits to it that you can then communicate. once you've gotten to the point that it's valuable in the fact that you get to have a conversation with your favorite Pinterest content creator,
Yeah,
whoever that is, whatever that utility is.
exactly.
So Derek, how are you like actually making it accessible, right? Like it sounds like you're not requiring cryptocurrency, but like talk to me through like how are you actually making this where it's like an on-ramp so that, your mom could support her favorite creator.
Yeah, for sure. So like you kind of alluded to, we do not right now, and we expand, or we plan on expanding into crypto in the future. Right now it is fiat in, fiat out. So from the creator side, it is a very simple, like 3-step process to create an NFT, right? You create your account, you're verified as a creator, and then it really just is input the image, select what utilities you want to add in a title, description, price. There's a bunch of options for how you want to list the thing, and the number of, editions, and all of that, when you want the thing to drop, all that fun stuff. But none of it is very technical at all. Like, you need absolutely no knowledge of how NFTs work to make that happen. You publish it, and then from the buyer side, you create an account, you purchase it through a credit card, and that's really it. So we handle, right now we're doing hosted wallets. We handle all the crypto conversions, everything on the back end. We take care of, we kind of do our own IPFS solution for all the actual metadata there. And yeah, everything Web3 related is entirely handled by us. And then in the future, for the more advanced users, we do plan on expanding into, bring your own wallet, select the blockchain you want to use, stuff like that. But for the time being, we don't really think that the creators or the supporters are particularly going to care about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, by the time that they do care, we'll have something in place where they can actually have a choice in the matter.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Are you building all this stuff from scratch? Like there's a lot of different tools out there. Like how are you finding it to actually build like a hosted wallet and like the, payments side of it, but still able to transact on the blockchain? Like, are you creating all this from scratch? Or are you able to find that there's like tools that you can utilize to like help, like create these experiences and really focus on the UX more than like a ton of like ground up coding work?
Yeah, for sure. So there are, in terms of like payment processing, so it's pretty much industry standard to use Stripe.
Yeah.
So we're using Stripe on the wallet side. So we are handling wallet creation kind of on our own. And that was partly because of cost and partly because of security. Like, we have some really good devs that said, it's both expensive and we're not really sure the transparency in the space behind it. So we'd prefer to just build this ourselves and have all the encryption, all the wallet handling handled on our ends. On the hosting side, so we're going with Polygon only first. They're
Gotcha.
incredibly easy to integrate with. That was one of the couple decision factors there, also because of the carbon footprint is just way lower than ETH as it stands right now. So 100% there. And then on the IPFS side, we are using, I believe we're still going with Pinata for IPFS pinning. So we could implement that by ourselves in the future, but for the time being, we're going to use a service provider there. Everything else, building an actual e-commerce platform, we really want it to have the look and feel that we want it to, in a way that there's not really a service that we can use that has what we want. And so it'd be just as much work to kind of get a pre-made solution and then tweak it enough as it would be to just build it from scratch. So yeah, it did take potentially a bit longer developing it, but from like you said, UX is super important, especially for people that are new to the crypto space. They don't want it to seem like a crypto website. The UX has to be there, and at least for our sakes, the security has to be there. Even if people don't notice it, it's one of those things that, like, people don't notice it until they do, and when they do, it's because there's a huge problem with it.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I was just curious because I've been looking into this, and there's like some different solutions out there, like magic.link that allows you to do like the wallet creation, and like paper.xyz that allows you to do some of the like checkout stuff. But it sounds like I think they still end up putting you end up getting cryptocurrency in the back end, even though the person uses fiat. So I'm not anyway, I just wasn't sure if you were using some of these different components. I know there's other companies out there, and based on when you started, these companies might not have even gone live yet, based on how quickly the
Yeah,
space is developing.
and
So I
that's
was just
another challenge.
curious.
No, that's another challenge too. Is like if you had asked us 6 months ago, half of the providers would not have been live. Like that's
Yeah,
that's how
exactly.
quick it changes. So it is difficult, right? And at some point you have to say, all right, we're developing this solution. The best that we can do is build a framework that in the future, if we want to swap out for a wallet creation provider or have multiple wallet creation options, we can build it in. But like at some point you have to make the hard decision of just saying, we just have to build it from here on out. We don't know if this company is going to be around in a year or what their cost structure is going to be like or anything. And so you just need to like make decisions. So the
Totally.
solid ones that we saw, we said, let's definitely go ahead. Otherwise, start from scratch, build out our own. And then in the future, if we want to swap it, let's be smart about how we design it.
Cool. Yeah, no, absolutely makes sense. And I was, yeah, just curious what your experience was on that front.
Definitely.
So where are you guys in terms of like development? Like where are you with the product at this point in time?
Yeah, so we're well on our way through alpha testing. So we've got a small group of testers that we have. I would say roughly like a dozen to 2 dozen testers that we're using to go through the site and really just use it both on the creator and the supporter side. We're planning on launching, I want to say later this summer. We're currently trying to partner with some esports brands. I don't know if you've kind of been looking into the space, but that's been an interesting thing that some of the smaller platforms are starting with, is like find an esports or some kind of corporate partner and go live with them. So we're tentatively saying later this summer, because if we partner with a brand, we're assuming that they're going to have some kind of extra requirements, in which case we're more than happy to kind of delay the launch if they need something that we don't currently have. But yeah, currently testing it right now, making sure everything is solid, both from the platform standpoint and also all the functionality that we have behind it. UX too, like that's something that we're trying to find people that have very little exposure to the crypto space, because we want them to bring, if you use Instagram and you come to our site and it is a rough transition, we need to know, and we need to know why.
Yeah. No, absolutely makes a lot of sense. Have you guys raised any capital, or are you guys bootstrapping up?
Bootstrapping right now, so always open to investors, but we're fortunate enough to be able to do this kind of moonlighting. So all kind of full-time software engineers moonlighting, and then after product launch, yeah, I mean, we're able to self-fund, and it, as it looks right now, we're not trying to go too heavy on like the advertising and have to raise from VC if we don't have to, unless there's a really good reason. And our preference would be to, this has also been kind of a trend with, you'll partner with some kind of esports team or some kind of organizations like that, and they will also seed invest in you. So there's more of like a branded partnership investment.
It's like a strategic partnership, right? Because if you're going to launch
Yeah,
with them, they want a stake if you guys are successful, kind of thing. Is
yeah,
that right?
exactly. It's a way for kind of both parties to have a stake in the game without, like I'm sure you're well aware, and your listeners are well aware, there are some VC firms that are great and they provide you with a bunch of actual value for the investment, and there are others that just kind of give you the money and you don't really get a whole lot other than that out of it. And so we're trying to put off getting that sort of investment if we can, because the people that we want to partner with, that's kind of key to our brand identity, is we're kind of careful about who we partner with. And if we're going to partner with you, there's got to be some reason, both ways. It can't just be flow of cash one way. Like that's just not how we want to do business.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense, Derek. And have you guys thought about using NFTs yourself as a way to mod it? Like, I mean, obviously you've got creators that are going to be using it, but have you thought about using NFTs, tokens, or anything like that in order to fund the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So really good question. We definitely want to make a clear distinction between, just for the SEC reasons, but as soon as you put some kind of actual monetary value or percentage of a company behind something, there's regulations there where if you're just selling some utility that you can't put a monetary value to, there are definitely differences there. But certainly, like, there have been companies that have done, ICOs is a big thing in 2017. I haven't seen it quite as much in this bull run, but certainly, like, that's kind of what we said, is if we had some kind of public, I'm trying to remember what they call those. So it's not IPO, it's like the limited, what do they call that? It's like a common thing where it's not a publicly traded bit, but they just offer private investors, God, what is the term?
Are you looking for like just like a private offering, or are you looking like, are you talking about like a crowd fund? What do you, where, like
Yeah, a different word for crowdfunding, but essentially that's
like an angel?
what
Okay.
it is.
Gotcha. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, well, there's different ways, right? Like, I was just curious. So, like, this is something that we've been working through, but you're able to like, there's other companies that have launched this, where they'll launch an NFT that has utility in the app,
Hmm.
in the product. There's no equity, right? Because as soon as you start putting
Right.
a percentage behind the company, then you're in SEC territory.
Right.
But like creating some sort of like, whatever, and as a way to encourage creators, brands to like buy in, or other people that think that might want to, anyway, just, I wasn't
No,
curious if you
and
thought through some of that stuff, because there's, as you said, there's so many regulatory things that you got to make sure that you stay very far away from, so you don't end up in trouble with the SEC. But also, being a Web3 company, I would, it definitely, I would assume that there's probably some level of interest there in trying to figure out how to use this technology yourself.
yeah, absolutely. And I think if we were to go with a VC firm, I think there'd be a way that we could work in, even for like transparency's sake, like make that thing into an NFT. If anything, it's just like some non-monetary, no monetary value, but something that just represents the funding, just so it's transparently out there. But certainly, like, there are things that you can do, like you said, that are not tied to equity in the company, but it could be, discounted fees on our site for the next 3 years. Like, that's something that's not equity in the company that has a real dollar value. We could offer that at a certain price. And then in the future, if the platform grows big enough and whoever that investor was isn't getting the value out of that, they could potentially list it up for sale. And someone that's doing more transactions on our site could go ahead and buy it. And there's real utility there, essentially, like, a transferable discount code or something like that.
Yeah.
That's some way of saying, if you believe in our platform, here's the transaction volume that it would make sense for you to own this thing, go ahead and do it. Or, like, people do it all the time with museums or other things, where you buy like a brick or like a tile or something, where it's early supporter. Like, absolutely, we could see doing something like that, where no equity, but hey, you're kind of forever on the blockchain as someone that supported us from day one.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we can talk offline about this, but that's something that we've been working on at Ostrich,
Yeah.
is what we're calling a startup rookie card. So it's that exact same
Oh, very
concept.
cool. Very
Um,
cool.
but yeah, I won't go into that here.
Sure.
So that's awesome, Derek. So you're getting ready for launch. You've got some early, users that are testing things. Like, what does
Hmm.
success look like when you think about like Enshrine, and what your aim is with the company?
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to put out any like hard numerical targets out there, because it's really hard to say, right? And there's a bunch of transparency on, the blockchain with the number of transactions, but at the same time, it varies so much. Like, if you if you look at collection volume for any of these large projects, and you look at the chart of the past 2 years, it's all over the place. It's ridiculous. I would say, after launch, if we can get 50 plus creators within, I would even say, like, 6 months, because we're targeting fairly big creators with fairly large audiences. Like, if you're from like the streaming world, we're really targeting that like Twitch partner. So the
Yeah.
requirements for that, I think, are 50 concurrent viewers on average, and then there's some other requirements there. But someone that has a pretty substantial fan base. So I would say, 50 plus within the first 6 months, and then a platform where, I guess, advertising aside, we are cash flow positive. That would look like success to me, because at that point, you would kind of prove out the business model itself, which is already kind of a sketchy thing to do if you're looking at the space right now because of how many of these platforms are VC backed, where there was all this hype last year and you saw these huge inflows of cash coming into OpenSea and their competitors. But really knowing like, can this business stay afloat without VC capital? And then you can start thinking about what would it look like if you pulled in X amount of extra cash? What sort of growth would that look like? But I think short term, 6 months, that's what it looks like. And the reason I don't want to go out any further than that is because I do think it is quite a different company than like Web2 startups. Like there's certainly overlaps, but there are also unique challenges where you already have this uphill battle trying to fight the existing image of like what NFTs are in sort of the public eye. And also like the cost structure is completely different too, because a lot of our costs are variable based on blockchain transaction costs, gas fees, how much IPFS costs at a certain point in time. Where like the vast majority of our costs you can't really project in AWS or typical cloud service providers, but the bulk of the costs are going to be on chain. Yeah. So yeah, sort of a long-winded answer, but yeah, something that stays afloat, cash flow positive, and something where you're seeing kind of a consistent upward growth.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I love that. And I wasn't asking for any like specific number to commit to or anything like that, but just, what does success look like to you? And seems like, just trying to get to that next stage of what the company looks like.
Absolutely.
And I think we glossed over this, but from a monetization perspective, that's based on transaction volume. Is that what it's going to be? Or how are you thinking about monetizing the company?
Yeah, so initially right now it would be based off transaction volume. I think the big space that we're looking at, so with this notion of utility, we can build out utility integrations all day long. So there are ones that we're currently building out, like an integration with Discord. So you hook up your Discord account, you buy an NFT that can grant you roles on a server. You can integrate with other social media platforms. But if you look at other products, like I don't know if you're familiar with like Atlassian or some of these more like corporate dev tools where they have these sort of in-app marketplaces. Mm-hmm. I think that's really where the monetization comes in, is where you could actually allow developers outside, third-party developers to build a utility integration on your platform and then monetize there. Because I guess that's an interesting way to monetize, because you're not taking it directly from the creator or the consumer. It's between these developers on your platform. And that's another way to kind of keep that fee low for creators. And I guess the motivation behind wanting to do that and not just jack up fees on creators like Twitch and other platforms have consistently done is like they're the ones creating value on the platform, right? Like utility developers would be as well, but creators are the ones providing the NFTs, they're providing the content, they're providing the utility. We have to treat them right. And so if we can monetize in other spaces, I think that's gonna be where we focus on before we look at fees. And also, if you look at the space, like you said, OpenSea's fee is what, 2.5%? We have to process credit cards, so we cannot do 2.5%, but we have to stay competitive in that space as well, which honestly I think is a good thing. And it's kind of competition that's missing from a lot of these larger platforms because they own so much of the space. But that's how it should be, right? Like fees should be that low, because platforms in some respects should be interchangeable. And the only differences really are, what's the additional value that you're adding? And that's how we want to compete, not based on, market share or something like that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thanks for going into that. And that makes sense. Definitely. Trying to find other ways to monetize. And like you said, yeah, it's almost like having that you then become a marketplace with connecting the utility, the apps, the other things that creators want to use. And then that's where the monetization comes in versus taking out of what creators, their income, right?
Yeah, so, exactly.
Awesome. Well, cool. Derek, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you sitting down. Anything that you want to share with the audience, kind of last words, and then please let everyone know how they can connect with you outside of this podcast.
Yeah, definitely. So Yeah, closing thoughts. I think I'll really just point them at the site. So it's enshrine.io. You can go there right now. We have a wait list for anyone that's looking to sort of get onboarded to the platform first, just for, for stability's sake. We're trying to kind of tier how many users we let on a certain point in time. So depending on when this releases, that may or may not be in place. The site might actually be live at the time. But yeah, go ahead and check us out at enshrine.io. We have a blog there as well if you're looking to get some NFT explainers, or let's say Thanksgiving is coming around the corner and you're going to have relatives that ask you about Web3 things. Just point them at our articles. Like that's what we try and gear the articles towards. So definitely go check us out there. I can also include socials if we want in the description. Definitely follow us there for latest updates. And yeah, definitely would appreciate just come checking us out, seeing what we offer, how it's different than some of these other NFT platforms. And yeah, any feedback that you have, definitely love to hear it.
Awesome. Thanks, Derek. I really appreciate you sitting down.
Awesome. Thank you so much, William.
On your way out, please share the podcast with others. It's the only way that the community grows and others hear these incredible stories from entrepreneurs and top performers. And of course, pound that subscribe button so you get notified when episodes drop every Friday. I'm William Glass, CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and of course, your host of the Silicon Alley Podcast. Have a very profitable day.
You got no time to waste, but still you hesitate. Caught in a circle saying, I'll never leave this place.